I usually don't ask this early, but if you could like the video and subscribe, it would mean a lot. We're so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, and your support can really help get my content out there. Thanks. Marc Delacroix walked through the tree-lined streets of Paris, his mind wandering back to the life he had built with his wife, Camille. After 35 years of marriage, they were preparing for a grand celebration of their love. Their children, Claire and Mathieu, now grown and living abroad, were coming home for the occasion. The thought filled Marc with pride and nostalgia. Life hadn't always been easy, but he believed they had endured everything together. Marc was 60, still tall and commanding with his salt-and-pepper hair and sharp blue eyes. He had spent his life as a lawyer, building a respectable career that earned him both wealth and admiration. His name carried weight in Paris's legal circles, and he had provided well for his family. Camille, now 58, had been a school teacher for most of her life before retiring a few years earlier. She had always been his anchor, the warm, nurturing presence that balanced his driven, sometimes distant personality. Their home was in the heart of Paris, an elegant apartment overlooking the Seine. It was filled with memories, photos of vacations to the French Riviera, family gatherings, and mementos of a life they had carefully constructed together. The upcoming celebration would be another beautiful memory to add to their collection, or so Marc believed. As the evening of their anniversary approached, Marc decided to prepare a surprise for Camille. He wanted to relive the moments of their early love, so he ventured into their attic to search for the old photo albums and keepsakes from their early years. Camille was out running errands, and he thought this was the perfect time to reminisce. The attic was filled with boxes, mostly from their children's childhood and old family items. But one box caught his attention. It was tucked away in the corner, a small wooden chest that he didn't recall seeing before. Curious, he opened it. Inside were letters, yellowed with age, tied neatly with a ribbon. The handwriting was unmistakable, but it wasn't his. The letters were addressed to Camille. Marc's heart raced as he slowly began to read them. The words on the page revealed a secret he was never supposed to know. The letters were from Laurent, a man who had been a close friend of the family for years. Marc remembered Laurent well, tall, charming, a banker with a silver tongue who had often joined them for dinners and gatherings. He had always been courteous and respectful, but now, reading these letters, Marc realized there had been something more. The letters spanned several years, dating back to a time when Marc had been consumed with work, spending long hours at the office, traveling for business, and often leaving Camille alone at home. Laurent's words were filled with passion, longing, and intimacy, describing secret meetings, stolen kisses, and moments Marc had never imagined. It was clear that they had been having an affair. Marc felt his chest tighten as he read the lines. Every loving word between Camille and Laurent was a dagger to his heart. Laurent had written about the guilt they both felt, the fear of being caught, and the excitement of their hidden romance. Marc's mind swirled with confusion. How could Camille, the woman he had shared his life with, betray him in such a way? His hands shook as he dropped the letters back into the chest. For a moment, he stood there in the dim light of the attic, the weight of 35 years of trust and love crumbling around him. Everything he thought he knew about his marriage now seemed like a lie. He wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but a part of him didn't even know where to begin. Marc stumbled down the stairs, his thoughts racing. He couldn't believe this had been going on under his nose. How had he missed it? Was he really so blind to what had been happening in his own home? That evening, Camille returned, smiling as she walked through the door, her arms filled with groceries for the party. She kissed Marc on the cheek as she always did, unaware of the storm brewing inside him. He couldn't bring himself to look at her. Every touch felt like a betrayal. He excused himself, claiming he was feeling unwell. He needed time to process this, time to think about what to do next. Over the next few days, Mark lived in silence. He couldn't bear to confront Camille yet, and he couldn't confide in anyone, not even his children. He felt trapped in his own emotions, struggling to understand how to deal with this new reality. His mind replayed moments from their past, times when Camille had been distant, when she had seemed distracted. He wondered how many of those moments were connected to Laurent. Camille, oblivious to Mark's internal turmoil, continued planning their anniversary celebration with excitement. She spoke of renewing their vows, of how much she loved him after all these years. Mark listened in silence, his heart breaking with every word she said. One night, unable to sleep, Mark found himself staring out the window at the city lights of Paris. The memory of their wedding day played in his mind, a day filled with joy, hope, and promises. He had believed they would grow old together, but now he wasn't sure if that future existed. Finally, after days of torment, Mark knew he had to confront her. He couldn't live with the lie any longer. The night before their anniversary, Mark sat Camille down in their living room. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he brought the box of letters with him. Camille looked confused at first, but as he opened the chest and pulled out the letters, her expression changed. Her eyes widened in shock, then in shame. "Mark, please, let me explain," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Explain what?" Mark's voice was cold, filled with pain. "Explain how you could betray me like this? How long, Camille? How long were you with him?" Tears welled in Camille's eyes. She reached out to touch his hand, but he pulled away, unable to bear her touch. "It was years ago, Mark," she said softly, "when you were working all the time, when you were never home. I was lonely. I didn't know how to talk to you about it. Laurent, he was there. He made me feel seen. But it's over, Mark. It ended a long time ago." "Over?" Mark spat the word. "You expect me to believe that? You expect me to forget that you lied to me for years?" Camille's tears flowed freely now. "I never meant to hurt you. I was weak, and I made a terrible mistake. But I love you, Mark. I've always loved you. Please, you have to believe that." Mark stood up, pacing the room as he tried to make sense of her words. The anger and hurt inside him boiled over. "How can you say you love me after everything you've done? You shattered everything we built." For a long time they stood there in silence. Camille wept, and Mark stared at the woman he thought he knew, now feeling like a stranger to her. The pain was too much to bear. "I need time," Mark finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't do this right now." He left the room, leaving Camille sobbing on the couch. That night, he packed a bag and drove to their summer home in Provence. He needed to be alone, away from the city, away from the life that now felt like a lie. Chapter 5. The Retreat. In Provence, the air was crisp and the landscape serene, but Mark found no peace. He spent his days wandering through the fields and vineyards, trying to come to terms with what he had discovered. Every memory of his life with Camille was now tainted by betrayal. At night he would lie awake, his mind filled with questions. How could she have done this? Was it his fault? Had he been too focused on his career, too absent in their marriage? The more he thought about it, the more he realized that their marriage had not been perfect. There had been times when they had grown distant, when work had consumed him, and Camille had seemed lonely. But still, he had never imagined she would turn to someone else. A week passed, and Mark received messages from Camille every day. She begged for forgiveness, pleaded with him to come home. She told him she loved him, that she regretted everything, but Mark couldn't bring himself to reply. One evening, sitting on the porch of their summer home, Mark made a decision. He needed to speak to someone. someone who could help him make sense of his emotions. He reached out to a therapist in the nearby village and scheduled an appointment. Mark's therapy sessions were difficult but necessary. For the first time, he was able to talk openly about his feelings of betrayal, anger, and confusion. The therapist helped him see that while Camille's actions had been wrong, the cracks in their marriage had been there for years. Mark had been distant, consumed by his work, and Camille had felt neglected. It didn't excuse her infidelity, but it helped Mark understand why it had happened. Over time, Mark began to heal. He realized that holding on to his anger would only continue to hurt him. He had a choice to make, whether to try to rebuild his marriage or to walk away and start anew. After several weeks, Mark returned to Paris. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew he needed to talk to Camille face to face. When Mark walked through the door of their apartment, Camille was waiting for him. She looked tired, her eyes red from crying. She stood up as he entered, but she didn't approach him. They stood there for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. "Mark," she began, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. I don't know how to make this right, but I need you to know that I love you. I've always loved you." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I believe you, Camille, but I don't know if love is enough anymore. You broke something inside me, inside us." Tears welled in her eyes again, but she nodded. "I understand." They talked for hours that night, sharing their pain, their regrets, and their hopes for the future. In the end, Mark made the hardest decision of his life. He couldn't stay in the marriage. The betrayal had cut too deep, and he didn't believe they could ever truly heal. But he didn't leave with anger. Instead, he thanked Camille for the years they had shared, for the love they had once had, and for their children. They parted on peaceful terms, with an understanding that sometimes love, no matter how strong, isn't enough to overcome the damage that's been done. Mark moved to a smaller apartment in the city, focusing on rebuilding his life. He continued therapy, working through the pain of the past, and slowly, he began to find peace. He realized that while Camille had betrayed him, he could still find happiness in the years ahead. As for Camille, she stayed in their home, carrying the weight of her actions, but also finding a way to move forward. They remained in contact for the sake of their children, and over time, their relationship became one of mutual respect, if not love. Thank you for watching Shattered Vows, a tale of betrayal and redemption. This story reminds us that trust is the foundation of any relationship, and once broken, it's hard to rebuild. But in the end, it's about finding the strength within to move forward, no matter how painful the journey may be. If you enjoyed the story or have any thoughts, questions, or personal experiences you'd like to share, we'd love to hear them in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.